Ladies and gentlemen, Ready Set Data. Thank you guys for tuning in, taking time out of your day to check in with us and see what we're talking about. Sounds like we're following up with your last topic, Lee. You talked about a plan last time. I'll let you get into the details, and now talking about how to implement that, right?
Yes, that's right. So last week I talked about if I'm going to start over, try to get myself into a data career today, what would I do? What would that plan look like? And so we talked about 6 different things that I would do if I was starting from zero today. And then last week we said that today we would talk about how would I implement that plan? What would I do to make those 6 things happen? Like what resources would I examine, investigate, use, that sort of thing to get myself started.
Beautiful. And that's the kind of awesome topics that I'm happy to share with people here. Ready Set Data. I forgot introductions. I'm Anthony Fortner, data engineer, and with me is Lee Markum, database administrator, aka database extraordinaire. Yeah, so I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, so basically I'm going to give you two routes that you can follow. You can take the free route,
Ooh, okay.
or the paid route, or mix them together. Yes, we can do the paid route. So I'm going to talk about the free route first, because not everybody has money that they can spend or are willing to spend on learning SQL or starting over to create a career in data. And quite frankly, you can do a lot without spending money. So I want to start there to get us going. So in last week, I talked about, I believe I talked about Microsoft MVPs. And if I didn't, I'm going to now. So a free route that you can take is there's a way to find out and identify Microsoft MVPs. And those folks are people who are dedicated to making the larger Microsoft community better by providing resources to people. They do a lot of presentations. They answer questions on forums like SQLServerCentral.com, Stack Exchange, that sort of thing. And in Microsoft MVPs is in no way restricted to data or databases, but that's what we're talking about here. But my point is, there's a way to find out who the Microsoft MVPs are, and when you find that the website, you can actually search for particular MVPs in particular fields or areas of interest. Mine, of course, is going to be databases. And then you can, a lot of times in their bios, they'll have lists of presentations they've done in the past with links to those presentations. They'll have links to their blog site, their blog, their website, and to other resources. And so just by finding these Microsoft MVPs, you actually can get a lot of good information just from that part. And I mentioned this early on and first because the internet is full of resources. And when you're starting out and you're exploring something, you have no idea who's telling you the truth and who isn't.
Or they were telling the truth and it's just not true anymore. Technology changes.
Yes. That also happens. So that's why I like to try to start with Microsoft MVPs. I think Oracle has something similar, and maybe other platforms like MySQL or Postgres also have similar things where these are folks who are vetted. They know that, for the most part, unless they just happen to be wrong about something, or as you said, Anthony, something changes, you're going to get good information from those folks. Certainly, you can't just search the internet for free resources. You can, connect to your favorite search engine and put in free resources for learning T-SQL or ANSI SQL or how to learn PostgreSQL, that sort of thing. But again, unless you somehow know some of the names or you're familiar with those resources, you don't really know the quality of what you're getting into. So that's the first part of what I would do in terms of taking the free route to get into a data career. If I were starting over today, is doing those free resource searches on the internet, looking at a Microsoft MVP so that I knew I was getting quality information from folks.
Right. And then you also, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when you find them, you also know roughly where they're located. So you might find people who are like literally in the area, like, hey, the Chicago area, St. Louis area, Florida area, whatever.
Yes.
Or just your time zone, which can be helpful. And there's other things, but I'm afraid I'm touching on something you can touch on later. So
no, not at all. But yeah, you get a wealth of information about that person, depending on how complete their bio is. I assume that they build the bio there. I've been on some Microsoft MVP bios that didn't have a lot of information, and some that gave me everything I wanted to know about them to help me get started learning from them. So I think it's a good resource.
Awesome.
The next thing I would do for free is attend SQL Server meetups. So there was an organization called PASS that stood for the Professional Association of SQL Servers. That has evolved now and is an asset owned by Redgate. And what was the past virtual meetups is now primarily something that's ran through the Meetup platform, although other people, some meetups, some SQL Server groups use something other than Meetup for a platform, but for the most part, it's Meetup. So meetups for SQL Server is what it sounds like. There are virtual and in-person and hybrid events. So no matter where you are, if you don't want to do an in-person event, you can find a SQL Server group that is meeting virtually and attend that. It's a great way to just kind of lurk and listen, see what the topic is about, learn about SQL Server. You don't have to participate in terms of answering questions or asking questions or saying anything. You can just come, sign into Meetup, join the meeting, cameras off, and just listen. And yeah, I think it's a great way.
And this is the thing I thought would be coming next. So I mentioned earlier, you find the MVPs and you find out information about them, where they're at. You may find out that they're in your area and they are part of a user group or whatnot, and so you have the opportunity to hear them speak or be interactive with them. There's quite a community, so there's ways to meet people and talk to them,
Absolutely.
whether in person or virtual.
Absolutely. And I would encourage you don't be afraid or intimidated of these folks. They're just people, just like you. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do in the morning. They eat their oatmeal or their whatever it is. They're just people. They just happen to specialize in SQL Server. They started out just like you, not knowing anything and asking, what is SQL Server? I have not heard of that before. And they dig into it and they found out that they liked it. And they became, kind of a subject matter expert on SQL Server. And that's what those Microsoft MVPs are. And you're absolutely right. Some of those folks run SQL Server meetups.
Or participate in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They either run them or they participate just as an attendee. They show up, they listen, they learn from whoever is speaking. They participate by, asking questions, that sort of thing. So absolutely. Number 3, I guess, the next kind of topic in the taking the free route to get started in a data career that I would do is I would go out to YouTube and search the names of the Microsoft MVPs that you looked up earlier, because some of those folks will have their own channels. Some you will find have recordings on YouTube channels hosted by SQL Server meetups. So a lot of the SQL Server meetups will record the presentations of every speaker that comes through. They post those recordings onto the SQL Server meetup channel. And so even if that particular Microsoft MVP that you're interested in doesn't have a channel, you might get a hit on YouTube or a bunch of hits for a Microsoft MVP that you're interested in who's presented at a wide range of meetups. And so, again, that's a way for you to know that you're getting solid information. If you're attending the SQL Server meetups and you're searching for YouTube or you're searching for MVPs on YouTube, you know you're going to get good information that is going to be super helpful. Now, I will say that, of course, there's a lot of good information outside of Microsoft MVPs. It's just a starting point. I think there's another channel that I've watched before called Tech Brothers, and they have very long series of videos that take you from beginning to end on SQL Server and how to do all kinds of different things. But as you get into watching those videos, you kind of get a feel for who feels confident, who is giving you good information, because it'll all kind of gel together and it'll make sense. And when you watch that one person who is the outlier way over here, you'll kind of get a sense of, not sure if I want to keep watching that person or not. No.
Yeah. And sometimes not just the information, sometimes it's how it's presented. So I know there's some people like I really prefer the way they do their videos. There's some people I really prefer the way they write. And so I'll end up finding certain people when I'm looking at something real quick at work and I just need, read something. I have to read an article to get something done. I will search and add that person's name. You'll start to realize which SQL celebrity you want to explain it to you, right? And then same thing with video. Sometimes you need to interactively hear somebody or watch them work.
Right.
Or all of the above, or whatever is your learning style.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be that person who kind of feels off and you're not really sure about them has nothing to do with their content. It just, for whatever reason, you're just not connecting with them. They're saying all the right things. Your information is good. It's just not feeling it. And that's okay, because that person is probably reaching other people that really get them, and they're building their own audience. Just you're not a part of that audience. That's okay. For sure. Next stop on the taking the free route to starting a data career would be attending online conferences. So there are at least two, and there are one other one that I'm trying to remember the name of that I didn't get into my notes. But conferences like 8KB and groupby.org. So 8KB is not, I will warn you, 8KB is not your first place to start or to stop off if you're trying to start a career in data. 8KB is level 300, 400. It's deep stuff. It's
a lot of 400.
Yes.
Well, the 300 is a break. It's great.
That's true.
But
that's true.
It's not for your first year.
Correct. It's not, but I wanted to mention it because it is a free conference. It is a free way to learn, but you probably wouldn't start there unless you're a freak like me. And the reason I mention this is that when I first started learning, back after the wheel was invented, I came across the Microsoft Certified Mastered videos from SQL Skills. And Paul Randall and Kimberly Tripp had been invited to create videos that would serve as the foundational knowledge for people trying to get what is now a defunct certification called the Microsoft Certified Master. It's hard and deep, just like it sounds. I liked it, and I kept watching them, even though I understood at the beginning maybe 10 or 20% of what I was watching,
Right.
along with all of the other things that were less deep. As I kept learning, I would rewatch the videos, and I understood more and more.
And you understood more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. So 8KB, and then groupby.org. So GroupBy is not. How do I put this?
I don't know.
I don't want to say that GroupBy isn't deep. There's not good deep knowledge there. There is, but that's not its focus. So you're going to get a wide range of depth of topics and depth of information from GroupBy, and I think it's a fabulous resource that's free. You can go out and register. They actually do a thing where I think they do quarterly conferences at this point, but they will, when you sign up, they will notify you about the call for speakers. People will submit, and they'll give you the chance to vote on who do you want to hear from. So that's kind of another interesting thing about GroupBy is you get to participate in selecting the people and the topics for the upcoming conference. And the day of, you can attend live, listen in, that sort of thing. I think you even ask questions. And then it's all recorded, and it goes on the YouTube site for GroupBy. Have you attended any GroupBy or 8KB stuff, Anthony?
I've seen GroupBy videos, like you said, they get posted. I've definitely attended 8KB, and I've enjoyed it. Like once, I mean, not all of it's actually. I want to say. Well, I was about to say it wasn't useful. It's probably not even true. Like, I happen to enjoy the internals of how Civil works, and I think I may not have watched that and been able to turn on use that information that they give all the time. But there's situations where the fundamental understanding of how the inner cogs, if you will, work and how they work together and how they don't work together has helped me make decisions. And I just generally enjoy it. It's not as big as some of the other ones. I don't remember how many there was, but there's session after session after session. Not a whole bunch of options. So you just show up and you absorb and you participate.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Taking the free route to starting over for a data career and how would I actually do this? So the next thing is Microsoft Learn. So you can go to learn.microsoft.com, and there's a training page there, and it will give you all kinds of paths down which you can follow or travel to learn Azure, the cloud platform for Microsoft, and databases. So I really would, if you are pondering the Microsoft platform for a data career, I really would encourage you to look at Microsoft Learn and see what you can pick up from there. They have lots of tutorials that you can actually just step by step. How do I create an Azure SQL database? How do I insert data into it? What are the tools? And it will teach you a number of things about the Microsoft data platform. So.
Yeah, you basically go into the source there too if you're a Microsoft data professional, right? They're interacting with SQL Server or Power BI or anything they do, really. That's going straight to the source, unadulterated.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to go.
The last thing that I had listed was I actually had this on the paid route because I thought it was a paid resource, but have recently been told that that's not actually the case. Something called launch code. So launch code, you apply to it, and they give you essentially a training course that you learn, step through. I don't think there's like actually a graduation, but you get to the end. There's a uh, yay, you made it kind of thing that happens. Do you get a certificate or something for completion of launch code, Anthony? Do you know?
I'm not actually. I'm not sure. I think there's a graduation. There's you show up and you get everyone hangs out and you did a good job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. There's definitely that, and then there's also after you graduated learning. Well, there's multiple programs actually. They have multiple programs. I'm not a launch code expert, but I'm a big fan, so I've been trying to pick up information. Um, they depending on which course you do, I believe afterwards when you're done with the course they can help you with placement or continual help as far as interviews and meeting people, because it's
Nice.
not just that you learned. They do apprenticeships with other companies. um, some members of my team actually were launch coders who apprenticed with my company and stuck around because they're awesome. So yeah, it's more than just, hey, you're going to take some classes and then you'll know a thing. They help place you with right-minded companies who are like, yeah, if we'll take some of your candidates and work with them and get them real experience.
That sounds pretty amazing. That not only is it just a boot camp kind of thing, a series of classes where you learn a topic pretty well to get you started, but they also help you with the placement process. And you if you're working on your own to get yourself started in a data career, again, you're on your own. You don't have any help. You don't have the connections that something like Launch Code would to get you introduced to a place that could hire you.
Yeah, they're all over the place. Oh, we got someone. Andrea says, yes, launch code is awesome. I'm in the SQL course currently. There is a graduation and a certificate. So
Nice to know.
live on the air. Yeah, good to know. And yeah, I've heard nothing but good things. So
Cool.
yeah, two
Thank you
members.
for that,
I
Nadia.
have a lot of coworkers. I don't know what a lot defined as. I know multiple coworkers who went through launch code, and I have two members of my team that I work with who not only went through launch code but apprenticed with us. So
Hmm.
I got nothing but good things to say.
Awesome. Okay, so we've gone down the free route of starting over. How do I get started in a data career? How would I do that? Now we're going to go this direction and go down the paid route. So I'm going to
Get my
rattle off.
wallet.
Yeah, you get out your credit card or your friend's credit card, and you go to don't do that. Don't unless your friend offers the credit card, then that's different. But don't just steal the credit card. That would be problematic.
And I missed a message from Craftsman. He said we've had a lot of good luck with launch code. A large portion of our developers are launch coders. So yeah,
Nice.
go on. I'm sorry.
That's fine. So on the paid routes, there are things like Udemy, Pluralsight, A Cloud Guru, and CBT Nuggets. So I mentioned all of these kind of in a rapid fire succession for a reason, because they're all very similar platforms. These are scenarios where you're going to sign up for the service. And in the case of Udemy, you're going to pay for individual classes.
Yeah, I would say that's a differentiator from the others.
Yes. And I actually like Udemy for that reason, because if I know I need to learn Python, for example, I can just pay $9.99 or $15.99 or whatever for that Python course, work through it, and I'm done.
You can also pay $9.99 for that course, work through it, get a third of the way through, and be like, this isn't working. I don't understand. I'm bailing. You're not out the large fee you would pay for a monthly service that gives you everything, including, Linux training and NoSQL training and yada, yada, yada. And then you can go to another course, download that, and realize that's better. I'm telling a true story there because when I was working on my SQL certifications, although I had Pluralsight at the time, and I'm happy with Pluralsight, I loved it. I could go to Udemy and be like, I want to hear this guy, and then no, I want to listen to that guy, and I picked the other guy, and then it worked out right. The one I ended up sticking with for one specific certification, and I listened to more often, was just a fellow from Britain, and he was the one I stuck with. I wish I remember the name, but you might find there's more of a buffet of options there, where Pluralsight, it's curated, which means it's high quality, they care about the product. But when I type in window functions in Pluralsight, I'm gonna get like 1 or 2 videos, and that's what I'm gonna get.
Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of why. Well, a reason that I don't pay for Pluralsight anymore. I had it for years, but don't use it anymore. Andrea is saying Udemy also offers financial aid that you can apply for. That's very interesting.
I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
We're learning a lot today.
Yes, we are. So, but I did have a Pluralsight account for many years and used it because, back when I started, like I said, right after the wheel was invented, there was no Udemy. And so Pluralsight was like, that was the option. If you wanted videos that you were paying for that were curated, that was the option. You could take videos or watch videos on all kinds of things. Again, we're talking about data, but there's Windows and all kinds of PowerShell, lots of different things. So, Pluralsight, I don't know what their current cost is. It's probably around $35 or $40 a month. That's what it was a year or two ago when I stopped. But Pluralsight, I will tell you, just because of my experience with it, it does have very good, solid SQL Server material on there. Not that the other ones don't, but I just know that Pluralsight does.
It's curated. They put a lot of love and care into working with the people making the content.
Yes, and you're going to have Microsoft MVPs.
Yes,
who are making the content on Pluralsight for SQL Server. So,
how long until I get a Pluralsight video from you, Lee? Come on.
I would love to do that actually at some point, but we'll see.
Bucket list.
Yeah, put it on the bucket list. So, the next thing I mentioned was A Cloud Guru, which is still independent, even though Pluralsight purchased them. I have poked around on that website, and it has a lot to do with. There's a lot of information about Azure, AWS. I'm assuming they also have Google Cloud Platform on there as well. So if you're looking to start a data career in the cloud, which if you watch last week's video, you will remember that was one of the things I said I would do if I was starting over, is learn a cloud platform. So if you're looking to do that, A Cloud Guru would be a good place probably if you have money to take the paid route, because that's what they specialize in. They specialize in cloud.
Do they help with certifications as well? Are they one of the ones that are certification focused?
Yes. So if my memory serves me correct, they they do have classes specifically focused on certification. So if I'm learning Azure, for example, they'll have a bunch of Azure classes, but which you could take and learn, but they'll also probably have something specifically for like the AZ900, which is Azure's entry level certification. And I think they also have certification tests or quizzes. They're not actual certification tests, but they're quizzes for the cert to help you prepare for the certification process and the certification exam, which was a really interesting big draw for me. I found that to be intriguing.
And then I did a quick scan of the site. They mentioned Azure. If you look for what they teach and you click on Azure, it's MVP led. So it makes sense, right? Probably got into contact with MVPs and worked with them to make content for Azure. So that's great. That's awesome. All roads lead to Microsoft MVPs, I guess.
Maybe. So CBT Nuggets is the next thing that I listed. I have not used the platform, just as I have not used a Cloud Guru. But I know that it is a big player in the field of video training. So cbtnuggets.com could be a good place for you to look at, to think about learning and learning whatever it is that you need to learn to get into your data career. Next section, kind of on taking the paid route for launching a data career these days, is a favorite section of mine, because I still love printed material called books.
Me too. I have quite the collection. I can't help it.
Yeah. So just kind of talk through or give you some some books that I would encourage you to take a look at, either because I've used them or I am somehow familiar with the authors. So if you're looking to learn SQL, if you're looking to learn T-SQL, which is Microsoft's proprietary version of the SQL language, then you can check out a book by Kathy Kellenberger called Beginning T-SQL, a Step-by-Step Approach. And Anthony, could you put her name in the chat, because it's not it's kind of challenging. Kathy Kellenberger. To give people an easy way to look it up.
Yeah, I can do that.
Kathy has been teaching T-SQL for years. She actually is a part of LaunchCode. She either is or was a founder or teacher for LaunchCode. And so she's a great resource. If you're looking to learn something more along the administrative side, there's a book called Learn SQL Server Administration by Don Jones. Now, Don Jones is mostly known as a Windows professional and PowerShell. And I have consumed his PowerShell material, and I can tell you that he can explain the heck out of something. So if you want somebody who can spoon feed you information in a way that makes sense, I would recommend Don Jones.
Is that Learn SQL Administration a month of lunches? Is that what you said?
Yes, that's what I meant to say.
Okay.
On the side, it's just Learn SQL Server Administration. But yeah, it's Learn SQL Server Administration in a Month of Lunches by Don Jones. D-O-N, Don Jones. While I have not read any of her books, there's another person making SQL Server or learning. Let me try that again. There's another person who has written books about SQL and T-SQL, Her name is Elizabeth Noble. And again, I haven't read her stuff, but she does have what I believe is supposed to be an intro book for SQL Server. So we've talked about learning SQL in this books category. Now we're going to talk about learning PowerShell, because PowerShell is an important part of data management. It's an important part of automation, of pipelines, of CI/CD. And if you're going to start a data career, and if I was starting a data career right now, I would be sure to learn PowerShell and learn it well. So that's why we're going to talk about this. So, learning PowerShell, books. Learn Windows PowerShell in a Month of Lunches by Don Jones and Jeff Hicks. I would definitely read that. I own that book. I read about 3/4 of it, which is how I was introduced to Don Jones. And so that's why I can make the recommendation that his Learn SQL Server Administration book in a Month of Lunch is really good. Or I expect it to be really good. The other thing is Learn DBA Tools in a Month of Lunches by Manning Publications. So this has multiple authors, and I don't know if I can credit all of them off the top of my head, so I'm not going to try to name those folks. But if you're not familiar with DBA Tools, it is a module within PowerShell. And the goal was to be able to do anything with PowerShell that you can do with SQL Server Management Studio. And be able to do it across SQL Server versions, and it would just work. I would highly, highly recommend that if you're going to get into the SQL Server platform and manage or automate SQL Server in some way, that you learn PowerShell and you learn DBA tools, because they will simplify everything and give you the skills that you will need to land jobs. The next book in this kind of PowerShell category would be PowerShell for Sysadmins by Adam Bertram, Bertram. I've read parts of this book. Adam is very well known in the PowerShell community. And so if you're looking to learn PowerShell, his book should be on your shelf. And of course on your desk where you can read it, because you can't read it if it's sitting on the shelf. So that was learning PowerShell. We're in the books category. We've talked about learning SQL. We've talked about learning PowerShell. And now we're going to talk about learning MySQL. So
your SQL?
Yes, the one that I have. We are going to talk about the platform called MySQL. And while I will tell you, I don't have much experience with MySQL. I have some exposure to it some years ago because it was in use at another job. It is wildly popular, and as I mentioned last week, if I were starting over in a data career now, I would make sure that I was multi-platform, or at least multi-platform aware, multi-platform functional, so that, if I was sitting down in front of a SQL server, I could be proficient, I could do the job. If I was sitting down in front of Postgres or MySQL or something else, I would make sure I had SQL Server and at least one other database platform that I knew. And so in this case, I put MySQL on this particular list because I have the resources for those, or at least a couple of them, to share. So that first book that I would tell you about is Muroc. It's just called Muroc's MySQL by Joel Muroc. There is another related book. It's called Muroc's PHP and MySQL. So if you wanted to build a front end to go with your back end, that's a book that you should get.
Because if you don't have a front end and a back end, you only have half a horse.
You might have a problem if you only have half a horse.
Yeah.
I could have actually put his books in with the Learning SQL section because I do have a Muroc book for Learning SQL, and so I totally should have put that in there. Muroc does have books for SQL Server, which is why I can recommend his books for MySQL, even though I'm not familiar with the platform, because I have worked through a good portion of his book on SQL Server. I think it's SQL Server 2012 for developers, and he explains things in a very clear way. He gives great examples, and so that's why I'm recommending Muroc for learning MySQL, because I'm confident that his books over there will be of the same style.
Very cool.
So if you're looking to explore some other platform, whether that's PostgreSQL or MongoDB or whatever, I can't help you with those because I don't have exposure to them. Anthony, you might be able to pull some names or something. And if you can't, that's okay. But again, you can use the internet to search and find information, cross-check, the data that you find across multiple sites to make sure you're getting a book that is reasonable and is going to have solid information. But my point still remains, I think books are still a great resource to learn SQL, learn T-SQL, learn PowerShell, and learn some other relational database engine like MySQL.
Yeah, I don't have any names or recommendations. I do know that when I was starting out, there was, I wonder if it's still a thing. I should Google it later. Cookbooks. Have you heard that term? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember I had one I used a lot because I was in an I was in an environment where I had multiple, just like you described, multiple database management systems. Right. I could be writing in Access. I could be writing in Oracle. I could be writing in T-SQL. I was even using SAS at that time. And there's books that aren't specific, right? So those cookbooks are like, here's your problem, here's some ways to solve it, and then it would say, in DB2 do this, and MySQL do that, and SQL Server, and
nice.
so on and so forth. And I, at that particular job, I utilized it a lot because at the time, it was just useful to see examples of how people solve things to get me going, right? I think that's also kind of peppered into how I now think in patterns, and I probably annoy my coworkers with, well, the pattern I like to use is this because I feel like it's useful because that pattern applies a lot of times regardless of the technology, a lot of times regardless of the environment, right? There's patterns that tend to work. So I wish I could name drop, but I just can't.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. I appreciate that. So that's how I would do it. So, kind of recap, there's a free route that you can go down, and there's a paid route, and you don't have to exclusively use one or the other, of course. So find some things from each route that work for you and use them to get yourself started in a data career. That's all I have at this point. You want to close up this part of the stream?
Sure. Sorry, yawn. It's getting late. It's like midnight here. Not really. This feels like it. I've had a long day. Anyway, this is great. I think it's super interesting that we didn't actually pre-plan it. I guess we could pretend like we did, but we both did resources. So that sounds, makes it seem like we're really synergized or whatever. But that worked out great. So I covered some things that I thought were a little lighter, and you did this great talk on resources that would help you accomplish the plan that you set forth that you talked about in your last stream. So that's great. I love it. I thank you everyone who joined, all the live people. who joined. And if you watched this after the fact on, let's say, YouTube, thank you guys. If you're on YouTube, you want to watch us live, we're on Twitch, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Find us if you're watching live, and we love you guys for it, especially the comments and the extra information. We learned some things from you guys. Feel free to look us up on YouTube as well. And all of you, whether you're live or in the past or somehow the future, find us in Discord and join the and talk to us, ask us questions, give us ideas of things you want to talk about, help steer us. We'd really appreciate that. So everyone, good night. Thanks for joining us. Signing out here, I'm Anthony Fortner, data engineer, and with me is
Lee Markum, database administrator. Thanks, everyone.
good night, everybody.